Hi guys, this is Ryan, and today I'm going to walk you through the first part of my workflow for creating a traditional 2D fashion illustration, but starting off with a 3D model. The software I'm using today is called Daz Studio 4.9 Pro. You can download it from the daz3d.com website. It is free. You'll have to sign up to their website and then download their install manager software, which will then in turn download the studio software and a set of free assets that you can use to get started. You can also purchase and acquire other assets that you can load into Daz Studio. Basically, it allows you to take any 3D asset, drag it into a viewport, position it, pose it, apply textures to it, apply lighting and effects to it, and then take a snapshot or a render. As you can see from the example on their website here, it's pretty powerful software and can render a lot of detail. Today we're not going to be doing anything quite so complicated. We're just going to use the basic Genesis figure to create. In the end, we'd like to create a line drawing of a figure in a pose that would apply to fashion illustration. So we're going to go back into Daz Studio now. And this is the basic Daz Studio configuration. On the left hand side here you've got your scene, and this will list all the objects that will appear in your viewport. Below that we have the content library, and I'm going to select the drop down arrows to the left of Daz Studio formats, my Daz 3D library, people, Genesis 3, and then I'm going to select this folder. And there you can see the Genesis 3 female figure. I'm going to double click it to add her to the viewport. And you can see that there are, 3 or 4 other folders here. We're not going to add clothing and hair to her today because we'll be drawing those ourselves later. But there's also a poses category here, and basically any humanoid figure that you pull into Daz Studio is usually rigged, which means that you can pose it with 100% control over how they're positioned. You also have 100% control over the camera angle, so you can pose and then rotate your camera angle to get the best picture that you can. You can spend a lot of time posing a figure. It can be fairly tedious. For the purposes of today's tutorial, we're not going to do that. But what I'm going to do is select the poses folder here and choose from one of the 18 poses that they have provided free with the Genesis figure. So we're just going to go with the fashion model 1 pose, and I'm going to double click it, and it gets applied to my figure. Now these are the viewport controls, and this is basically how you control the camera angle that you want to view. So if you hover your mouse over any one of them, it'll show you what it's called and what you need to do to make it work. So we've got the orbit, left and right, up and down, and the pan, left, right, up, down, zoom, in and out. This one is frame. If I select, say, the head and then press frame, it'll change the focus of the camera to zoom in on that item. If I want to reset to the perspective view, I just press reset and I'm back to where I was. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to position her. I'm going to zoom in so that she's taking up most of the render area. Then use orbit to change the angle a little bit. I'm going to go here, about there. And I just kind of want to see both arms for my illustration and kind of have a balanced chest, and then I can deal with the foreshortened leg fairly well in the illustration. So we're going to think I'm pretty happy with this pose. So I'm going to go over here to my render settings. I've changed the engine to the basic OpenGL engine. The default will probably be the NVIDIA iRay. However, that's for more like the renders you saw on the Daz 3D website. For our purposes, we're really going to be messing with the image a lot in Photoshop afterwards. So I just need a really basic render of the figure and the pose of her body. So we're going to leave it at basic OpenGL. I set my aspect ratio to 8.5 by 11 because I'm going to print this figure on an 8.5 by 11 paper, and I wanted to have a representation of that when I was positioning my camera. 2000 pixels by 2588 is basically a large render for the screen in this proportion. I'm going to call my first one, Croaky 1, and I'm going to store it on my desktop, and you can of course pick whatever names and folder you are happy with. I'm going to press render. This warning basically just says you have to wait and watch your render happen. Sometimes renders can take a long time, and if you get bored and go to Facebook and browse around, there's a chance that your render won't work properly. But this basic OpenGL render should go really quickly, so I'm going to press OK. And here's my viewport with my very large render on a transparent background. Now you can see my file information here. I'm going to keep the same, and I'm going to press save. Now I'm going to take a second render, but this time I'm going to rotate my camera around to the back side. And we'll say that that's good. And this time I'm just going to go to the render button. Press OK on the warning. Wait a minute for the viewport to open up. And this time I'm going to change the file name to 002, and I'm going to press save. I'm going to reduce these and go to my desktop and open up the Croaky 1. And I can see my figure facing forward, and Croaky 2, my figure from behind. So next up we're going to bring these into Photoshop and render them down to line. And that will be in my next blog segment. If you could please check out my blog at ryan.ca. And if you complete the tutorial series and you find this video helpful or interesting, feel free to like it on YouTube, share it with your friends on Facebook and Twitter, and any other method that you see fit. So thank you for your time today, and we'll see you next up in Photoshop.